Good evening and good day, my international people. This is Louise Wachu on the You and I Talk on Radio. Today is January 12th, 2012, and we are broadcasting from Vancouver, Canada. And today's show is about where is my money? Where is my money? Where is your money, people? I know a lot of you spend a lot of money shopping and all that stuff. And January is usually the month that everybody is broke, regular people anyways. And so this is the perfect time to ask, where is my money? But we are not going to ask just where is my money superficially. We are going to go deep into it. We're going to know where money comes from. We're going to know who makes money, how it's spent, if it's real money. I mean, today you're going to find out. So we wish you riches and wealth and everything in 2012. And that's why we're starting you with money. Our guest today, his name is Lawrence Sarsoun, and he is the author of America's Monetary Mess. Did you get that? America's Monetary Mess. We wish you better success in your financials. And so we're going to bring on Lawrence so we can talk about the money mess.
Hello.
Hello, Lawrence.
Yes, how are you doing?
How are you doing? Thank you so much
Pretty
for
good.
being on the show.
Mm-hmm.
So your name is Lawrence Sarsoun, and you are in Florida right now.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you are the author of America's Monetary Mess, but that's not just how you got your expertise in. Let's tell our listeners who exactly you are and how you have the expertise of the topic of today, the topic of money.
Well, I started out in 1970. I was on the floor of the exchange in Chicago, the American Exchange, the International Monetary Market, which is a division of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
Mm-hmm.
And at the IMM, which is the initials, we used to trade currencies and, of course, the dollar. And so there was a time when we were going through the so-called dollar devaluation, and Nixon had closed the gold window, and I began to wonder what is going on with our currency, that it is under such tremendous pressure from the other currencies of the world. And so I did some research and did a little digging, and I ended up in the Constitution of the United States, and I have really come to the conclusion that we don't have any money in the United States. I base that on the fact that we used to have money that was made out of coined gold and silver, but that ceased in circulation, and we used to have notes in the 60s that were redeemable, that they could be converted into gold and silver coins, but then they ceased that operation as well, and so that left us where we are right now with merely fiat money. And this fiat money is based on the fact that they can't convert into gold and silver, and our Constitution requires gold and silver for the settlement of debt. So if there's no money, and there hasn't been any since 1965, then we come to the question about what about all these mortgages and credit cards and all of this so-called stuff that's been going on? Are we really in an obligation to repay any of this stuff which was basically printed out of the air? And so we've come to the conclusion that once Federal Reserve notes were no longer redeemable in the lawful money, which is what it says on the note itself, that we had no obligation to repay a lot of these so-called debts. And so I personally, myself, back in 65, went to a Federal Reserve Bank and went to a Treasury operation here in Chicago, and I said, I'd like to redeem this note for the lawful money. Because if this is redeemable for the lawful money, then it itself is not lawful money.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so, of course, they laughed me out of the building. They thought that was kind of silly, and they wanted to give me more paper, and I said, I don't want the paper. I want the real money. I want silver, and I want gold.
Uh-huh.
And so that started a kind of a lifelong adventure in dealing with these people. And
this was in when did you do this? In
1965.
In 1965, the bank was already laughing at you, the Federal Reserve.
Yes. The redeemability of the notes had ceased. If you go and get some of the old notes from 1964, you will see the legend says that this note is redeemable for all debts, public and private, and is redeemable in lawful money at any Federal Reserve or United States Treasury. And so I took them on that legend, and I said, this is what your note says, and I'd like to have my money. And so they wouldn't give it to me, and so I realized at that moment that we are now in a situation where whoever had control over the printing, whoever could create money out of the air just by the putting of some ink on paper, they had control over the whole country.
Uh-huh.
And this went back to this gradual process. Back in 1933 is when we had this first financial crisis, which, in my opinion, was created by the Federal Reserve when they increased the margin rates for the people, and they had the stock market crash. And then they used that as an excuse to take the people's gold. They confiscated the gold. Mm-hmm. And then in 1965, they confiscated the silver. So there's been two giant heists in our history. And now we're at their mercy. We have no money.
And now they're going to confiscate the notes that you still have, because they're going to be printing new money, new credit card, chips, plastic money.
Exactly. The more they print, the less it's worth. And the less it's worth, up goes your prices. So we'll see massive inflation. We'll see probably hyperinflation. And we're already seeing in certain areas that we're seeing rising of prices. Well, stop thinking of it as rising in prices. The currency is losing its value. And the more they print of the currency, the less it's worth. And the less it's worth, the more it's going to cost you if you're using those currencies.
But according to what you're saying, is it illegal to have American money? How would it be illegal if I printed money? And why do they get to print money? Because it seems to be like what they're doing is illegal and unconstitutional. Now, why can't anybody print money if what they're doing is illegal anyways and unconstitutional?
Well, they have a little monopoly. They won't let you print money. They'll call you. They'll put you in jail for being counterfeiter. But they can get away with it. Well, who gave them that power? Read the Constitution. It says, we, the people, have told our Congress, we've said to our Congress, we've given our Congress the power to coin money, not the Federal Reserve. And it has to be coined money, gold and silver coin, not paper. You can have paper. It's a fine thing. You know, it's a nice idea as long as the paper is convertible for the real money.
Uh-huh. Now, is it reasonable to base your money on gold and silver when you do not have enough gold and silver on your own land to back up the paper? Doesn't that mean that you will then be required to go out there in other countries who have gold and silver and kill them for their gold and silver in order to have money?
Well, the silver, we have plenty of silver. In fact, that's why we chose silver as the standard of value back in 1792, is because this country actually had a lot of silver. And then we figured out the ratio between gold and silver, and the Congress sent Alexander Hamilton over to Europe, and he came back and he said the ratio is 15-1. And so they set up coins. They created gold coins, and they created silver coins based on the ratio of 15 to 1. And so it was all a mechanical process. It was all very neat and easy to figure out. But we have, it's sort of like if you have a Monopoly game. If you have a Monopoly game, your game can operate based on the amount of money that's in the game. It's only when somebody comes in from another, with some, maybe they have a game of their own, and they bring in some more money, and then that deflates the value, that depreciates all the value of the money that's in the game. So in the beginning, we had silver, and we had all kinds of silver, and we had gold, and if we controlled the amount of gold and silver that we had in circulation, then that would be sufficient to conduct all of our services and goods based on the amount of gold and silver that we had. But once we start using paper, then there is no stopping. This whole thing has gone crazy, like this trillion, quote-unquote, $1 trillion debt. Well, that's absurd. It's just made up. It's printed, in the basement of the Treasury or wherever, and it's all bogus. So, the Constitution clearly says that the Congress can only borrow money. So if there was a finite amount of gold and silver on planet Earth, which there is, then there's a finite amount of gold and silver that can be borrowed. Once you reach that point, you stop borrowing.
Isn't that incompatible with what the American system believes in of infinite growth?
Well, that may be they may have a thing to think about there, but I don't believe in infinite growth.
Nature, because what you're saying makes sense if the person takes into consideration that we are part of nature, we are part of a planet, and it has certain resources, and we cannot abuse them. But
exactly, there's a limit to everything. So
exactly. But this idea of infinite growth and a system where you can be rich and rich and rich and rich and forever rich and accumulate as much as possible, isn't that kind of anti-nature?
It's absurd. It's absurd because there are limits. There has to be limits of whatever we do. So we said to the Congress, we're going to let you borrow money, and the money has to be gold and silver, and so therefore we had control. We had a limit on the amount that could be borrowed. And so what do we have today? We have a paper money system, and we're out of control. They have trillions. It's a figure that you can't even think. It boggles your mind because it's so absurd.
Have you heard the story where they were actually bombing Libya and Gaddafi because they were trying to establish a gold standard in terms of money? So this would mean that the people who are doing the right thing are the people that they actually went and bombed.
I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry.
No? So what would be the solution? What do you propose for the upcoming future in order to deal with this? Can I call my bank and tell them that I don't owe them anything?
Well, this is a possibility that there will come a time. We have people that are disgruntled. Let's just call them disgruntled. They have different groups, like, for example, Occupy Wall Street. To my mind, these people are disgruntled because they simply don't understand the fact that there is no money. We have destroyed our country. We have destroyed our monetary system, and the ultimate result is going to be chaos. Yeah. So I'm not happy about the future.
So but what would be this chaos? Is this something that has to happen, or is this something that can actually be avoided?
I don't see any way of avoiding it.
So you're going to crash no matter what happens. Now, after you crash, what's the new system that will have to come up? More illusion, more creation of worthless money, or back to the silver standard? Because you have silver, but you don't have enough gold, right?
Well, I just think that the old system of gold and silver cannot be restored because evil people are in charge and they're running the show, and they're going to come up with some evil plot. The country is actually in a mess, and I don't think that we're going to see a solution. And I'm a Christian, so I think, well, this might be the end of times, and maybe the old devil Satan is going to rule the world through his henchman, the Antichrist, or something. But I don't see us returning to a normal 1950s style situation where we still had gold and silver in those days, and we still had some sort of common sense approach to our monetary affairs.
That's very interesting. But me personally,
because once you start printing paper, who's going to stop you? It's like a disease. It's like a cancer. So they'll make $1 trillion this year. Well, then tomorrow we'll make $10 trillion or $20 trillion or whatever. For a recent example, just look and research what happened in Zimbabwe and some of these other countries like Brazil, where they had hyperinflation and they went through the printing presses and they had a million Zimbabwean or 2 million or whatever it is. The answer has to be that you have a complete destruction of your system, and then you have to go back to something real to start out with. Like, for example, after World War I, the Germans went back to a system where they talked about the rent mark, and this was like renting. It was based on something real, which was the land. So they stopped having the printing presses. They were simply trying to get away with getting rid of this retribution that had been laid on them by the Allies, and so they printed their way out of their problem, and the result 10, 20 years later was Mr. Hitler.
Very interesting. Now, personally, I believe that the human beings can rule this world if they are free-minded, and that the devil has no power whatsoever, and that this world will not end at any given time, because, we are here forever and on to further worlds forever. Now, money. What is money really? Money is what me and you agree that it's money, right?
Okay, well, one of the things that's in the book is an example of how the money system could have come about, and that's the idea that there is some labor, that labor is some kind of wealth that is secured by, like, let's take the example of a man
So what were we saying? Money is what me and you agree on, right?
Oh, yes. I was telling you the example. Let's say that we have a fellow who is digging up some silver. He's going to make some coins. So he digs up the silver that represents labor. And then he takes the silver and he gets it refined and he gets it minted. And now he can exchange it with somebody else who likes the idea of a pretty silver coin. And it's standardized and it's official. It's got the stamp of the government on it. So once we find something like gold or silver, which is precious, which is hard to find, which is valuable intrinsically, it has innate value, then we can exchange that amongst ourselves because we're all familiar. We know it's real and it's exchangeable, it's divisible. It has all the qualities that we like to see in money. However, this paper that's being circulated has no intrinsic value. It's fiat money. It's printed press money, and the more they print of it, the less it's worth. So if there's more and more and more of it every day, it will increasingly become worth less and less until it reaches the point where nobody's going to want it. Well, people, even now, in some places of the United States, people are bartering. They will give you things of value, your things of value for their things of value, vice versa, because it's something that they can trust, that they know is sure, and it can be determine that it's positive. But
Mm-hmm.
paper, once the paper presses start going and the hyperinflation sets into action, then paper will no longer be legitimate, and we'll go back to bartering with each other with canned goods or 22 shells or water or things of value.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now, this is very interesting because this means that the countries that we call poor are actually the countries that are really rich.
Because they have natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them have natural resources. People here in the United States in urban places have nothing of natural resources. Most of them wouldn't know how to plant a seed in the ground if you gave them the seed.
Mm-hmm.
And it may come to that. It may come to the point where you have to go back to nature, kind of. That we have to go back 150 years to where we used to dig things out of the ground, and we would have something of value. We would have resources, and we would be exerting ourselves so that this labor comes into the equation. And that's the whole problem, is that we're dealing strictly with credit, with paper, and people have fallen for this stuff, and so they're in deep trouble. And
now, do you think that this is because some people don't want to work? Because, like you say, this planet and us being prosper on this planet requires for everyone to put in their labor.
All right. While we're thinking about, we're going down that direction, let me throw something out here. There's been a lot of talk about unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
And we can think about, we thought back and did some research on the unemployment. And we come to the conclusion that maybe perhaps we could put people back to work if we got rid of the minimum wage law, for example.
Mm-hmm.
If a person could go to work for $6 an hour or $5 an hour instead of a ridiculous sum, then he might be able to willingly do a labor and get off of the unemployment and become a productive member of society once again.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a bunch of people that are running for president. Has any of them come up with that? No.
Definitely
it's a simple
not.
idea.
But aren't people accepting those low-paying jobs anyways? If people who are expecting minimum wage are not taking the job, or don't you have enough poor people to take those jobs anyways?
But if the minimum wage law is like a barrier. It creates a barrier between employer and employee.
Mm-hmm.
If we said, hey, these two people want to make a contract, one fella is willing to work for $5 an hour, and this fella is willing to hire him.
Mm-hmm.
So why should these lawmakers make a law that's artificial, and you could put people to work, and maybe they'll work at a wage like $5 an hour, and after a while they start getting themselves back on their feet again.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't go back to work and they just stay on the dole, what happens? The debt of the country becomes greater and greater, and people are not productive, and our productivity as a nation is dwindling. So
very interesting. Now, are you telling the people who live in other countries who may have their own food, they're growing their own food, and they have their own resources, not to accept the dollar, not to accept to trade in any paper money, to continue to trade in their local money, to trade in their local currencies, in gold and such things?
Well, there has been quite a movement out of the so-called the paper dollar, the currency, the Federal Reserve note, whatever you want to call it. There's been an ongoing migration out of the U.S. currency for 40 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're at the point where we're getting to some really serious numbers, and we see the whole thing is bogus. Now, let me give you an example of what I think of our debt. We have another country that used to be our enemy, the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
I did some study on communism back in the 60s, and once a communist, in my mind, is always a communist. So I don't trust them as far as I can spit.
Mm-hmm.
So here's these people, and it says in a good book that the borrower is slave to the lender.
Mm-hmm.
So are we slaves to the Chinese? They have 17 trillion of our debt. And, what if they find out that this stuff is all bogus? Are they going to be happy with us? No. They might even throw bombs at us.
I think you'll throw bombs at them before they throw bombs at you.
Well, whatever, I mean, if I was in the position of the Chinese,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be a little bit ticked off, wouldn't you? I mean,
I would not
you're
be
lending
business
to a
with
nation. You're lending to a nation. You're making goods for them. They've been making stuff for 20, 30 years, and they're getting back from us pieces of paper that are losing their value.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound like a good deal?
Or maybe that are not even worth anything because they're not based on any gold or anything. They cannot redeem them, like you said.
Yes, the only thing that you can do, well, let me give you an example right now. When I acquire Federal Reserve notes, since I see, every time I go to Walmart, I see that prices are rising, so I see that I am in a losing position holding paper, quote-unquote, money.
Mm-hmm.
So what do? I get out of it right away. I convert it as soon as I can. I go into something that's tangible. Silver. I purchase silver coins, silver ingots, silver dollars. Get out of the paper and go into something worthwhile. Something that's going to appreciate or at least hold its value. If nothing else, I can buy myself some short-term protection by buying things like food, water,
Mm-hmm.
ammunition, things like that, things that I can use to live on.
Mm-hmm.
Because
now, do you think that people are going to get violent and people are going to need to be protected and they're going to need ammunition?
Well, the thing you have to remember is that the government is perhaps not on our side.
It's definitely not on your side.
Yeah, we have these people like the FEMA and the TSA and all these other people that are involved in violations or civil rights left and right, and they have these supposed camps set up. So do I look forward to dealing with them? No. And do I expect that they'll become more and more abusive? Yes, because power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So they will become more and more abusive, and I don't see anything good coming out of that unless we get a bunch of constitutional patriots that finally realize they're not going to have this anymore.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would they have to do? If you actually had some courageous people, like the courageous people who took on England, I mean, how did people take on the British Empire in order for America to be free? And what is so hard about you now? Which is oppressing you? Do you have a new invisible empire that is oppressing you that you can't even begin to know how to revolt against?
I think that the thing I go back to again, being a Christian, is that the old devil Satan is alive and well, and people are doing things that do not promote freedom and liberty and equality, and they're involved in all kinds of things that the Lord probably doesn't think too much of. So we have abortion, we have gambling, we have all kinds of evil. Mm-hmm. And so after a while, it catches up with you. And I think it's catching up with us in a hurry.
So the devil is catching up with America because of all the evil things that go on in America? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I think it's time for a revival. I think it's time to turn back. We have a lot of stuff that are coins and such and flags and such that says, under God, in God we trust, but I don't think we do. Because this is not a holy nation. This is dog eat dog. This is
If you did actually trust in God, you would not print it on fake money.
it talks about that in Proverbs where God says diverse weights and measures. Well, yeah, it's diverse weights and measures. Funny money.
Now, what about these credit cards? Everybody has credit cards, and everybody has debts on their credit cards. What does it mean for people who have debts on credit cards? It's even more fiction than money, right?
Well, again, we're back to the borrower is a slave to the lender. Mm-hmm. So when you're at the trough there and you're getting the easy money, quote unquote easy money, and then you go out and abuse the money, then the piper has to be paid.
Mm-hmm.
And that might, if you want to tighten your belt and realize the kids can't have the latest smartphone, or you can't eat out every Friday at the steakhouse. Once we maybe tighten the belt and start to watch our spending and get to a little bit more of frugality, mm-hmm. and being a little more careful with our finances, then maybe there's a chance to establish some stability. But mm-hmm. it takes each person, each family, they have to make a concerted effort so that they can cut the spending, stop the spending, and try and cut corners in order to improve your way of life. We used to be a nation of savers, mm-hmm. and that's gone away years ago, mm-hmm. and I think it's time to get back. And you look at the nations that are savers, and they're probably doing better than we are.
They are definitely doing better than America. Now, what do you think about this ancient history that back in Africa, some people used to trade in shells and cowries, and that was also considered to be currency and money? Does it have to be gold and silver? Can it be shells and cowries and?
Well, the thing about gold and silver is they've been around for about 2,000 or 3,000 years, mm-hmm. and they've been pretty good. They've worked out pretty good, and so we've learned from a history, 3,000 years, that gold and silver are precious, that they're kind of pretty, that they could be made into coins, and that we like them. I remember the story was told back in the 70s by one of the tax protesters. He talked about the story that in 1920 you could buy a new car, mm-hmm. top of the line, for $800 silver dollars. And mm-hmm. then he said if you still had the $800 silver dollars mm-hmm. in 1970 or whenever, 71 or 72, that the $800 silver dollars, when converted to Federal Reserve notes, would still get you a new car. In fact, maybe even a better car. Mm-hmm. So the point was that silver holds its value. It's a store of value. And that's one of the key things that money has to be. Money must be a store of value. If you use something as money and it loses its value, like the Federal Reserve notes, then you're in a losing game. You're a fool.
Okay. So it has to be this solid value, and then it has to be something that anyone around the world would recognize its value.
Yes, precious and of innate value. Silver is especially precious because it has a lot of applications, economic applications, more so even than gold. That's why I think the ratio of gold to silver is going to go back to that 15-to-1 area.
Uh-huh. What is it right now?
About 40. Last time
so
I looked,
one
I think it was
silver
40.
is worth 40. One gold is worth 40 silvers now.
Well, we can figure it out. The gold the other day was like 1,600, and silver was like 25 or 30, something like that. So you just divide the two, and that gives you your ratio. I haven't figured it out lately.
I see. Now, and what were you saying about the mortgages? We know a lot of people in North America are going to be homeless because the banks are saying that they owe them money, and if they don't pay, they need to be out. Nobody has a job, nobody has money, or everybody has fake money, like you're saying. So, and these mortgages, this is based on nothing because they're not. What's going on?
Well, I brought up the point in the recent newsletter that something called Jubilee occurs about every 50 years or so, and this came out of the Jewish tradition, in which in the year of Jubilee, all debts were resolved. They were wiped off. The slate was wiped clean. And I said 1965 is when our currency, the Federal Reserve note, was made illegal. It was immoral. It was unconstitutional. It was not redeemable. And so if you had received anything that was a contract denominated in so-called dollars, it was bogus. It was false. You did not receive dollars. A dollar is a silver coin. I know that from the Coinage Act of 1792, still in the books as far as I'm concerned. I think we're still on the silver standard. We've always been on the silver standard. It was fixed in the Constitution. And if you received notes in which they purported to be dollars, but they really weren't, then you've been defrauded. So you go back to your mortgage lender and you say, gee, what did I get here? You want me to give you these Federal Reserve notes, but did you say that you gave me dollars? Did you really give me dollars? What did you give me? You gave me some piece of paper maybe in 1970 that was worth X amount of purchasing power. And now, 40 years later, the purchasing power has decreased enormously. So you've crooked me. You're a crook.
Aha.
You Mr. Banker, you're a crook. Where did you get the power?
And then you refuse to leave the house?
Yeah.
And then they send the police in to kick you out.
Yeah. So what are you going to do? We all have one life to give. If you tell that to the bank, they're still going to send the police to kick you out and close down the house, right? Did you know that there are thousands of people all over the country that are sitting in their homes, that they've been in there for 2.5, 3 years, and nobody has kicked them out yet? Do you realize at some point or other, when the people who are public officials, like your police officer, your county officials, your county officers, when they find out that they're getting paid bogus money, they may not want to show up at your door. They may not want to knock on your door. They may even agree with you. They may even have a mortgage just like yours.
So the key is to educate everyone, to probably send this show to everyone, and to tell them.
That's why I would like so much to get in front of this Occupy group, because they're chewing up the wrong tree. If they could just find out the real enemy is the Federal Reserve. They crooked you. They're crooks. They've been crooks since 1913 when they started this fiasco. And then they stole all the money in 1929 by manipulating margin rates on stocks. And then they stole the money in 1933 when they rigged up the gold confiscation through the government. What happened to that? Where's the money? What happened to the gold?
That's very, very interesting. Now,
isn't it? And what happened in 65? If they took the silver, where's the silver?
Very interesting. That's a great question. Now,
they stole our money.
The Federal Reserve? Who is the Federal Reserve? Because these are individual. We always talk about these institutions, but these institutions have real individuals that are identifiable by names, that have addresses, that are living on this planet. Who are those people?
Oh, I call them the banksters. And they don't want you to know. They want to keep everything as secret as possible, and it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all voodoo. These are like the high priests of the 2,000 years ago. Everything is deception, lies, and manipulation. And they confiscate everything from the people. So if you fell for their manipulation and that they said they were lending you dollars to buy your house, you say, Where's the dollars? What happened to the dollars? Did I get dollars? I don't remember seeing dollars. Dollars is silver coin. I don't remember getting silver coin.
Mhm.
So you ask them what did they give you? Did they give you a piece of paper? Gee, where'd they get the piece of paper? Did you print that piece of paper? What gave you the right to get that piece of paper? Why can't I get that piece of paper?
Mhm. Yes.
It's all fraud. The whole thing is fraud.
Wow. Now, what have you been doing since you were working for the International Monetary Market in Chicago?
I've become a teacher.
Mhm. And what do you tell your students? How can they have hope in the future? What do you tell them about the future? What do you advise them?
I bring a real silver dollar to the class, and I bring a Federal Reserve notes, and I spend a few minutes explaining, like I'm going to have a class tomorrow, social studies, which is always good because sometimes it's history class or American history or Constitution or something like that, in which case it's nice to get to their little spongy heads, you know. And so since I am of the opinion that things are in a downspin and that we're going to have a hard time ahead, I tell them to go home and tell mom and dad and their family that they need to stock up on some things. Get themselves a little water filter for a supply of water. Get themselves some food, maybe toilet paper, because some of these things are going to become very valuable. And you want to have items for barter because people are going to reject the money after a while. They are going to stop accepting Federal Reserve notes. Like, for example, when I do shop at the Walmart, for example, and they ask for, the clerk will say that's $35. I'll say, will you accept Federal Reserve notes instead of dollars? That always gets them. Then we have a little education class that goes on, and they say, "Oh, I didn't know that." I said, "Yeah. 40 years ago, you could turn these into gold and silver, and that redeemability was the thing that made the money honest. But once you got rid of the redeemability, you don't have honesty anymore."
It becomes corrupted. Can the people invent themselves their own currency? Can me in my neighborhood and you in your neighborhood get together with our neighbors and say, this is how we're going to be exchanging our goods as of now?
It's already happening in certain places of the country. I think if you did a little Google about Michigan, and you would find out that there are certain areas of the country where the people are using, and they are accepting gold and silver money, and some places they're even accepting foreign currency.
Foreign currency?
Yeah.
Which one?
Like in New York, I heard a story not too long ago that people that go back and forth to Europe were bringing in euros. Now, I don't think that's a wise thing because I think that's going to depreciate in value too. But they were accepting the currency of the European Union. So there's nothing to stop you and I from doing our exchanges in whatever we'd like. If we like gold and silver, which I happen to like, if people want to pay me, like I work for a county, I can write a letter to the county. I know they're going to laugh at me, but I could write a letter and I could make a point. I could teach them. I could educate them. I'd say to the county, well, the county is a political subdivision of the state. And the state, in the Constitution, says that no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin as a tender and payment of debt. And the dollar is a silver coin, Coinage Act 1792. And please, could I get paid next week in dollars? Now, of course, they're going to laugh. They'll just ignore me.
Yeah.
You have to do something. If you just do nothing but aggravate the snot out of them. But there might come time when somebody will pay attention and they'll read the Constitution and they'll say, hey, gosh, that guy's right. Like I had a traffic ticket a couple of weeks ago. Let me tell you this story. And I said to the judge, I said, Judge, didn't you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution? And she said yes. And I said to the officer, Officer, didn't you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution? And he said yes. And I said to the clerk, I says, Mr. Clerk, didn't you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution? So then we got to talking about Article 1, Section 10. Well, they all said I was wrong. I said, well, read it and weep, maybe it'll sink in. But anyway, I established that it's in black and white in the Constitution, no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin as a tender in payment of debt. And I said to the judge, are you trying to make me pay something that I cannot pay? I do not have any silver dollars. Is this cruel and unusual punishment? Oh, she was so mad at me by the time I was done. So, did I accomplish the big thing? No. Did I accomplish something? We have to, it's like guerrilla warfare. We just have to nibble at the edges.
You have to, make your point wherever you can and hope that the seed that you plant is going to grow into that individual, and because individual difference and change matters, right?
Absolutely. And this is one of the tenets of the book is that we talk about, for example, there's a chapter there about the render unto Caesar, because I often run into Christians that have this philosophy about you have to obey the law no matter what. And I say, well, the law's the Constitution. And, oh, by the way, there is no Caesar in the United States. The United States was established on the principle that we, individual people, we're sovereigns. We're the sovereigns. I'm the king. She's the queen.
Yeah.
And we're in charge. We, the people.
Yeah. But the people have given away the power.
It sets them back. They think you're a heretic or something,
They have definitely given away the power, particularly the power of thinking, because if anybody was using the power of thinking, they would see these things clearly. Now, what's going to happen if I'm a millionaire and I have millions in the bank?
Let me make one more point while I'm thinking of it. Well, we have to think back to the days of Jesus. And what was one of the things that he did? Who was he railing against at one point or other? He got mad at the money changers. Who are the modern day money changers? The Federal Reserve. They've changed the money. And so was Jesus upset with money changers in his day? Yes, he was. Should Christians follow his example and be upset with the money changers? Yes, they should. And was it unjust? Would God think much of this unjust system and how people are being turned out of their houses and how they've been swindled? I don't think so. I think God is very upset about all this hanky-panky that's going on with the money. I'm sorry, go back to your question again.
Yes. Now, my question is, let's say you are one of the rich people and you have money in the bank, you have millions. Is that worth nothing? What are you supposed to do with that?
Well, if I was a millionaire, I would certainly be converting it hand over fist as quick as I could into something tangible of goods and services, like maybe I'd get some gold and silver, and maybe I would move some of my money out of this country since this country is becoming so obsessively like a tyrannical. Yeah, this country is becoming very against civil rights. I'm looking for the word. These FEMA camps.
A dictatorship.
Yes, a dictatorship. Totalitarian. That's the word I was looking. Our country is becoming so totalitarian, and eventually, we're going to have to all make a decision whether do we want to stand for our liberties and spit in the guy's face, or walk off to the camp. I personally don't. I don't want to go to the camp. So if they knock on the door,
you'll just shoot them.
Exactly.
Because you're getting more ammunition. You told me you were getting more ammunition, so I'm thinking you just shoot them.
Yeah,
because they'll be trespassing.
If they
will
come in
they
the door.
not be trespassing on your property?
Oh, we just had a story in the news just the other day about a young lady sitting in the room with her little baby, and she had somebody who was banging at the door, and she was worried that this person was going to come in, and he came in and pushed away a couch that she had put in the way, and when he came towards her, she gave him the shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
And she was found not guilty. She was justified in what she did.
Mm-hmm.
So, at some point
you're
or other,
telling me that the ultimate solution is for me to go out, get a gun, get ammunition, and tell my bank that we don't know each other.
Well, I don't know if you have to. I would say it wouldn't be a bad idea to have a gun. It's always a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But for sure, I would raise the question. You can do it politely, and you just say, "Well, what did you lend me?" And I'm not sure that you lent me dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And let them explain it to you. I mean, if they're so smart and they can explain it to you, well, okay, fine, no harm done.
Mm-hmm.
But
what about
that's not what happens. Let me tell you, I know from personal experience that is not what happens. These people are so they'll get their hackles up, and they'll be vicious, even though you're being nice and you're asking them a simple question. These people who are associated with wrong will come against you like, raging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's the counter? Well, what's the fighting? What is our weapon? The people who are on the opposite side, do we have to do extremely good against extreme wrong? And what would that extreme good be?
Well, I'm a Christian, so I have my personal beliefs that when I pass from this life into the next, I'm going to go to paradise. Mm-hmm. And so that's a tenet of the Christian belief. Mm-hmm. So I can say, well, God, if this is what you want me to do, if you want me to be a crusader on behalf of you against this money changing crowd, then I'm willing to give up my life. People have to make a decision as to what they're going to do. This was the same decision that the founding fathers made. The founding fathers said, we're going to establish a separate country away from England, and this is the way we're going to run it. And they some of them paid with their life, some of them paid with their families, some of them paid with property. All of them pretty much paid with something. So the cost of freedom is blood,
And it looks like they used to say that each generation is responsible for its own freedom. So how many generations do you think you have skipped? And how far into chains are you?
Well, I'll say one thing. We sometimes dismiss our younger generation. We think of them as, a bunch of hippies or dropouts or ne'er-do-wells, but sometimes they'll surprise you. And it's an interesting thing that there's a wave sweeping across the globe of people who are turning to a righteous cause, and who are straightening their lives up, and who are learning to be moral and civil and upright. So there's always hope.
That is exactly what we're doing, and we have 3 minutes left, and this is exactly what we're trying to do, to inform the people, to exchange this kind of information, because this is not something that you're going to hear in the mainstream media. How come you cannot go on CNN to say these things, or any other big stream media to say these things that are true and nation-saving? How come you don't get the airtime on television to speak about this?
Well, there's certain people, evil men in high places, and they control. They're control freaks. They want to control everything. And so therefore they don't want to hear this. They don't want to see their monopoly threatened. They don't want to see their money system challenged. And so they're going to do everything they can to make it difficult for anybody who wants to speak the truth.
All right. What happened
to Jesus? He spoke the truth, and where did he end up? On a cross. Right?
And we are here to be on the cross and to speak the truth, because there is no cross in the end anyways.
Well, I wish you the best.
Life continues.
Appreciate the opportunity.
I definitely thank you for coming on the show and to inform our listeners of these important things. Now, where can people get your book?
If you wanted to if they could write to you, you could forward them on to me. That would be the safest thing for me and my family.
I hear you. I will. Okay, yeah. So if anyone wants to get the book from Lawrence Sarasoon, the book is called America's Monetary Mess. People, send me your message and I will forward it to Lawrence for his own security, because we are dealing with big people over here. But we are not scared, because we were here before money existed, right? And we will be here after money has disappeared, right?
Exactly. Human life, human ingenuity, the human spirit is capable of a great deal of many things, and we can do it outside the mainstream. It's all about ingenuity.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we will love keeping in touch with you. Have a great evening.
Okay, very good. Night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You have heard for yourself, my international people. Good always wins. Money is fake. Get gold. Get silver. Forget everything else. Exchange services and good things with people, because we're rolling on an illusionary world anyways. And we have been here and we will be here. And thank you for tuning in. This is Louise Uwachu on the You and I Talk on Radio. Have a great night.